Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Livable Roadways Committee. This morning, August 16th. Still waking up. So we'll go ahead and do a roll call. We did that.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning.
I'm sorry, Gail.
Councilmember Hurtak,
Here.
Cal Hardy,
He's virtual.
thank you. Yanika Mills,
Here.
Kevin O'Hare, David Hay,
Present.
Emily Hinsdale,
Present.
Danielle Riffenberg, Larry Josephson,
Here.
Karen Kress,
Here.
Rebecca Hessinger,
Here.
Justin Willits,
Virtual.
Jason Jackman is excused today, sorry. Anna Quinones,
Here virtually?
Glorimar Belangia is also excused, as is Carlos Ramirez, Una Johnson,
Here remotely.
Catherine Coyle,
Here.
and Melissa Colazzo, Arizona Jenkins,
Here.
Gus Ignis,
Here.
Bryn Dauphiné.
Here.
I believe you have an in-person quorum.
Yes.
All right. And I don't believe we are doing the vote for remote consent anymore, as we do have communication from all those who are virtually.
And before we do the flag, introduction of other members, anyone else here today?
We usually just do that with new members. I think we have new
Okay.
ones.
Great. Well, then let's all stand and do the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with freedom and justice for all.
Okay, so do we have anyone here for public comment today? Okay, well, moving right along. Any comments on the minutes for June 21st? If not, can I get a move for approval?
So I do that move.
Okay, so I have a approval from board member Ignis and a second from, sorry, I'm still needing. From board member May. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. We have some status reports today. 2050 plan needs assessment equity.
Good morning. Good morning, Connor McDonald, CPO staff. Put this in presentation mode.
And he's the project manager for it. So he'll present as a consultant, which is what's on our agenda. And if you would project, because when the air conditioning's on, we have a hard time hearing.
Absolutely. So Connor McDonald, CPO staff, here to present the 2050 plan needs assessment for equity.
It's on, okay.
So a little bit of background. This is a new addition to the long-range transportation plan. So it's new to 2050. The equity needs assessment was not part of the 2045 LRTP. It will draw upon issues, needs, and recommendations identified through data analysis and public input. We found this information from the performance measures that are federally required, the non-discrimination and equity plan that was done in 2020, various health-related projects, the state of the system report, and others. So the first steps of this needs assessment for equity was to define 13 focus areas. We defined these through the federal environmental justice areas, used our non-discrimination equity plan, and also consultation with local governments and agencies to develop the 13 you see here. So the left is the environmental justice areas, and then the right would be these focus areas that we've defined for this needs assessment. So we wanted to put these focus areas through different performance areas to see how they would evaluate based on the county average. So these are kind of aligned with the categories that you saw in the 2045 LRTP. So the good repair and resiliency, Vision Zero, smart cities, and real choices. And some examples would be sidewalk and pavement condition, average posted speed, and the number of fatal and serious injury crashes for Vision Zero. The presence of particulate matter 2.5 in smart cities, walking and bicycle level of traffic stress and real choices, LTS. So this is just a quick summary of what we found. This is a very short presentation. So this is how they're scoring, and the focus areas are scoring in the equity areas, the top disparity categories. This will be more detailed in the needs assessment, the final report. Just for some examples, the USF university area, the top disparity category would be Vision Zero, and that's common for also Dover, East Tampa, Gibsonton, and Waimama. Bealsville is also as well scoring a high disparity in Vision Zero. Carver City experiencing traffic and air quality disparities. Palm River, Claremont, and Progress Village with repair and resiliency, as well as Ruskin. Sulphur Springs and University Square, Athana-Tasasa experiencing real choices, disparities. Town and Country Pine and Crest with McFarland Park, again with that traffic and air quality. So based off of what we found in those scenarios, how they're scoring will base recommendations or project recommendations, prescribing projects related to those disparities. So for sidewalk repair that would be needed, we would prescribe sidewalk installation and maintenance. Vision Zero recommends speed limit reductions, complete streets implementation, installation of protected on-street bicycle facilities. Real Choices recommend roadway improvements, addition to trail networks, and transit frequency and stop recommendations. And the next steps, again, this is a very short presentation, but the next steps are to identify specific project recommendations specific to each disparity in those focus areas, identify cost estimates and recommended projects, and all this culminated into a final report and incorporation into the 2050 LRTP. And with that, I'll take any comments or questions.
Thank you for that presentation
Absolutely.
and the brevity. Love that. Yeah, the same. Anyone have questions about it? Yes. Board Member Kress.
Thank you. This is great, and I didn't know it was going on. And I wonder how is this going to influence the priority of which projects are funded moving forward?
Right, that's a great question. Something we're still working out whether it should be its own funding bucket or incorporated into the funding buckets like Vision Zero, Real Choices, or equity should be incorporated as a bonus to those. So whether they should receive like an extra push if they're also noticed in the equity needs assessment. But it's something we're still working out, and just something we're open to taking comments and suggestions.
Well, if appropriate, I'd like to make a motion that this be given very high priority the next time funding decisions are made.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay.
I have a point to bring up.
Yes, so, yeah.
Isn't it mandated under the IRA, the Recovery Act, that all the transportation funding that came in for the Infrastructure Act do have to take in economic consequences and try to be repairing of the previous 20 years of transportation planning that cut neighborhoods, particularly poor neighborhoods, in half? So isn't that already mandated in the federal legislation?
Many of the grant opportunities, and Lisa kind of knows a little bit more than I do about the grant opportunities, but a lot of the questions are asking about Justice 40 and how that relates to the federally, which is essentially the federal non-discrimination plan, which you're referring to. And right now, we're just making sure our non-discrimination plan that we did in 2020 will meet that category, so we can have funding opportunities with the non-discrimination.
Okay. Sorry, that's.
Yeah. Members that have been here a little longer and have seen presentations on our non-discrimination and equity plan know that extraordinary detail that this TPO tries to go through to do that. Yes, now federally it's a requirement, so we're ahead of the game. And then I thought I'd bring this topic too, as we're going through the beginnings and baby steps of the LRTP. So I want you to see how we bake equity right in. And if you have a, since it's not something historically TPOs had done, got greater, better ideas on how we do that. It'd be great to get that feedback now because you're seeing the needs. Virtually then later we'll see what we can cost affordable. And there's not a lot of money, so how do we get it in there when you have a lot of not money, and stuff. So yeah, good feedback to get.
I just wanted to clarify, as long as I've been coming here, there's always been equity in neighborhood discussions.
Yes.
So we are, like you said, we're ahead of the game. We've been baking that in all along. Okay.
For the recent, past. Board Member Hinsdale.
To add on to what Karen was saying, maybe this is then our opportunity to be more specific in how we choose to make it a priority, if this is where we have input. And I appreciated your suggestion. I would lean toward that idea of kind of giving equity, boosting something up in every category. So that would be where I would think. So that would be my suggestion to add on to Karen's motion.
You said that?
Yes.
I have another question. Isn't Vision Zero one of our top priorities? So now we're going to add this economic equity part into that kind of list of this committee's priorities. I'm just trying to clarify. I'm not trying to agree or disagree.
I'm just nodding.
But, okay, so last year, the year before, we said Vision Zero was supposed to be one of our driving forces. And now we're going to add equity, neighborhood equity, whatever the right term is. I'm sorry, I'm not a policy geek. Into that, what are our other stated priorities, just so I know what that list is in my head? Is there a?
Do you want to answer
There's
from
another list?
the perspective? Otherwise,
Yeah, so the priorities as there are now, the first one is state of good repair and resilience. Vision Zero, I think it's smart cities, real choices, and major investments. And that comes out of like the 2045 public surveys, discussions with the board and committees of what the priorities would be. Is that how you would answer?
economics is a lens, the efficiency of what the, bang for the buck is always a lens, safety's a lens, ADA is a requirement, like accessibility is a lens. We have a lot to balance, but yeah, it's good to get feedback that you guys believe that equity is important as well. Board Member Hessinger.
I'd like to see us prioritize the communities that we know a lot of families don't have a car. They don't have two cars, they don't have a car. They have to walk, bike, or whatever. And I think that should be, especially, I've worked in the university area for a long time. I think when we look at communities and how to prioritize, we should make that.
Yes.
That's one of the 8 factors.
So question on the motion, just to be clear. It is to prioritize economic equity and give a bonus to things. Is that what we did?
Yeah, I mean, I think as opposed to saying, we have our Vision Zero corner piece of the pie and our state of repair piece of the pie. I wouldn't want a separate equity piece of the pie. I'd want equity in all of it. Personally, I still want Vision Zero in all of it, but that's not what we have. So can we at least do equity in all of it? So if a project falls within a Vision Zero thing, it gets a star if it's got an equity component. If it's in state of good repair, it's got a star if it's got an equity component. That's
And
how
we're
it's
focused on economic equity.
That's not our definition of equity. I'll let
Okay.
Connor.
Right.
Only because I'm thinking about what Rebecca said, the economics really covers it all. We have a poverty-stricken area.
Right, and zero vehicles on poverty are considered in the 8 factors, or the multiple factors in choosing the focus areas that are chosen. So it does include economic equity, but it also includes racial, ethnic, etc.
Age. household numbers. Okay, so maybe
Put the
since
map up again.
you guys seem very curious. So another way it gets baked in, you've seen my studies come through. So of course, I've got safety in the schools and Vision Zero corridors that I'm analyzing, but I have had 40% go to safety, 40% go to equity. So I'm not studying and analyzing the top schools in a community that's not a community of concern, because we have mapped them and we know where they are. So we're not building way out here where there are zero factors. We're studying and analyzing in our communities of concern. That's how we're doing it now, but yes, we're refreshing and updating. So we're looking at, is there a new, better way to do it? Good feedback, guys. Yes, board member.
Just for clarification, where all we're doing is we're writing a letter to the team based on what the preference of this board is. Correct?
This is a status report, so all advice from this advisory committee gets shared through your committee reports with the board members at their next meeting. And Connor's going through the draft needs plan, and then it turns into the actual LRTP that you adopt. So now this feedback is going to help Connor and his consultant team refine and finalize the needs tech memo to then be the foundation for the LRTP, which you will vote on later. So this is advice now through motions.
Okay, so it's
Not a letter.
not a letter to the team. Okay.
It's
So Karen has a motion and it's been seconded by Emily, is that correct?
Seconded by.
By Heather.
Okay,
State that.
any more comment or? Okay, so let's,
Lisa, you got the gist of
Yeah.
of it, okay.
okay, so is this something that we would need to vote on individually?
no voice.
Okay, so all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you. So now we're moving to the Hillsborough County Transportation Design Manual update.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa, did you happen to get my email?
I did. It's not easy, but I did honor your request.
Thank you.
Please don't email presentations at the last. Yeah, this, the latest greatest is ready to go. You'll make me popular with the IT team.
Is it supposed to be up here?
Yeah, just go to the PowerPoint portion.
Here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for the official one, I changed the title.
Do we have a clicker that changes?
Just hit enter. Or up and down. It's up and down is probably. They probably have a clicker, but I just.
Okay, like to thank you all for inviting me to speak about our new design manual that we've been producing for the last, putting together for the last 2.5 years. It's called the Hillsborough County Transportation Design Manual, which it will be pretty much known as HCTDM. I'd like to give acknowledgements to the following committee that sat in and worked hard to come to the conclusions that we did on the manual and the design criteria. It's Leland Dykus, Mike Williams, County Engineer, Bob Campbell, Abigail Flores, myself, Glenn Morris, and our consultant, Ferguson Knightley. So what's inside? There's 8 parts that are inside this manual. There's 3 parts to part 1. There's 5 sections to part 2. Part 1 is an introduction of and the processes that we went through. We talk about safety analysis in there. Part 2's design guidelines. Produce design bulletins to identify criteria that's different than our adopted criteria, which is FDOT criteria. We talked about context classification, typical sections, speed management strategies, and last but not least, I'm going to give you a little clue to where we are in the schedule. So part 1, introduction and processes. The county specific processes for designing plans. We have adopted design standards and specifications, goals for safety, context, and multimodal networks. We identify certain portions of our plans development process. We've instituted a typical section package process for every roadway project where you have to provide the typical section. It has to be signed off by the technical services director and the county engineer. We have multimodal safety analysis. This is an analysis that is much greater than the original analysis. Typically, I'll talk about that in a moment. Plans production submittal. These are just some of the things that the consultants that we have to submit. Design criteria table is they have to submit that in with the original plan, so everybody knows what the criteria is and the reviewers know what the criteria is. I talked about the typical section package approval, the design exception and deviation memorandum. So if we deviate, we have a process that follows pretty much to FDOT's process, except we call what we call deviations, they call variations. We couldn't call it variations because the DSD, the Development Services Group, has a thing called variations. It's a very complicated process. So this is one of the processes that we came up with. Typically, when consultants look at crash analysis, they look at the police reports and they look at the bottom. The police say the crash was because of a wet road. And that's what it ends up being. So we've asked our consultants to look at a completely different crash data collection review when they look at the project before, during, and after. So approaching the site of the crash, at the site of the crash, and then what has taken place after the crash. So from this, they can do a benefit cost analysis and come up with a selection of countermeasures and make recommendations and possibly come up with innovative solutions instead of just telling us the cause of the crash was because the police said it was a wet road. So there might be things before the location of the crash where visibility is a problem, trees blocking the road as the approach on a curve, or signs have been blocked. So they're supposed to look at all those individual things. So that's one new thing that we initiated for our analysis for our projects. So part 2, we have started writing design bulletins. A long time ago, 4 years ago, we adopted FDOT criteria because the county didn't have a real standard criteria for arterials and collectors. We had a manual called TTN, but the entire name of that manual is Transportation Technical Manual for Subdivisions and Site Development Projects. So we created a manual for our arterials and collectors. So design bulletins, we adopted FDOT criteria. And then sometimes FDOT criteria is more than what we really require. And so we kind of modify that criteria a little bit, and how we do that is through design bulletins. This also introduces new processes like the multimodal safety analysis that I just identified, and other changes or notifications that we want to make. So for county preferred criteria, we changed the criteria for sidewalks to 6 inches. Introduction for county procedures, I just talked about that multimodal analysis, and conflict with FDOT criteria. We changed certain, like I have identified the design speed to be to the posted speed, where DOT usually has 5 or 10 miles an hour more. So all of this is posted on our Public Works CIP project resources website. At the end of this presentation is a link to that website, and incorporated into the design manual. All the bulletins will be incorporated in the design manual during the biannual update. We are currently doing the biannual update for all our manuals, which the manuals will be updated in October, and we expect this manual to be included in that as a publication in October. So one of the things that we did is, the context classification recently changed. We had a different context classification that I'll speak about a little bit later than FDOT. We looked at our complete streets guidebook and the typical sections that they had in there. And then we worked our design manual to work with the complete streets guidebook and the typical sections. And as a result, we have our design manual with specific design details. So the design guidelines, how do we classify a road? So typically, the old way was functional classification, arterial collector, and locals. And on the right there, you can see that that was based on mobility. The new way is our context classification, where the road is classified by the surrounding environment, natural, rural, towns, urban, and so that's based on an axis-based classification. We have 5 classifications. DOT has 7, 8 classifications. They identify C1 and C2. C1 is natural, like a forest with 10,000 acres. But we don't have in Hillsborough County forests with 10,000 acres. So we combine C1 and C2, where we say C1 and C2, that can't be pulled apart. C2 is more rural, agricultural type land. And so we differ with DOT in that. Also, we have the C3T, which is suburban town, as opposed to rural town. Rural towns for DOT are towns surrounded by a forest or surrounded by farmlands. We don't really have that. We have towns like Wamama, which are suburban, what we call suburban town. The rest of the contexts are similar to DOT. We do not have C5 or C6 with urban center or urban core because they're owned by City of Tampa or any of the cities. So this is out of the Complete Streets Guidebook. This is a typical section that shows shared paths, what was wanted, travel lanes or the high priority items. And And what we tried to do is match that exactly. And so in a lot of the new typical sections that we're going to develop, we've moved the bicycle lane off of the road and put the bicycles on shared use paths. So a lot of people with young children are not using bicycle lanes on the road. They feel it's too dangerous. So one thing I want to note, if you look at the laneage, we have 25 feet total asphalt. And if you look below, there's A and B selections. There's a little box in the lower left that said 10 or 11 foot lanes. So why do we have 25 feet if the lanes are only 20 or 22 feet? We sat with the fire chief and emergency services, and 25 feet is the envelope that they need to get a emergency vehicle through the middle when cars are pulled to the side. So that's a lot different than what people are used to, but that's a requirement that the fire rescue chief wanted, and actually the fire chief has the right to overrule our design in engineering. Just want to go through this real quickly. The actual annual fatalities on our roads, 5 deaths per week in 2021. Projected was 253. I don't have the current numbers. 44% of the crashes were due to lane departures, pedestrian and bicyclists, and crashes at intersections. So 92% of our crashes were on roads with posted speeds greater than 40 miles an hour. 71% involved speeding and aggressive driving. 2/3 of the people were involved were younger than 35. So what's happening on the roads, and how can we think and plan differently, to design differently? So one of the parts is in part 2 is design guidelines, is the speed management section. This is similar to DOT's speed management section, but we have identified where these strategies, such as a roundabout, lane narrowing, can be used in the context classifications and what speeds they should be used at. And as you can see in the graphic, we all know that 40 miles an hour, 1 out of 10 pedestrians are going to survive. But as you get to lower speeds, the survivability rate is greater. So design manual highlights considers all modes of transportation, heightened awareness for safety, connecting people with communities, opportunities to reduce speeds, shared use paths for suburban and rural areas, emergency vehicle accommodation, alternative bicycle protection treatments, right-of-way for corridor preservation, which the new typicals are defining the new required right-of-way. So what will this do for our community? Saves lives, roads will benefit all users, roads will benefit our communities, goes beyond transportation, better economy, healthy environment. We think the plan and design, we will think plan and design differently to make our roads safer for all users, for our communities. The links are here. Any questions?
Congratulations.
Let me see if the link will work on here, and I can take you to.
It's also in the agenda packet and Googleable.
So this is our website, and on the website there's several buttons here that'll take you to different parts of our website. And I don't think I can get back to my presentation.
Yes, you can.
But the other link takes you directly to the draft of the manual. And where we are in the draft of the manual, we've already sent out one request for comments on the manual. We've answered those questions. We're going to send all the manuals out again. We're going to send all the manuals out again beginning of next week for comments on all of the changes in the manual. All the changes in the manual will be highlighted in color so you can see what they were. And if you want to comment on it, there's a comment process and you can comment on it. This is the location for the manual.
So
Right
the
there.
request for comments will go live next week if the committees, agencies want to comment on it.
Yes. Yeah. Anybody can comment on it. There's a process there where we have a comment log that you can log in just like any thing that you see on the internet. Type in your comments. You have to supply your name and add, phone number, and email address, because we like to respond back to you what our answers are. We don't say we're going to do everything. Sometimes we say, no, that's not possible, but we can do that. So all those things are logged in. We send the responses that we made back to the people that made the comments. And so that's been an ongoing process. And we're looking at October to publish this manual and also publish all our other manuals, which are one biannual update. Any other questions?
I'm
Cal?
sorry you don't have your, Cal Hardy, Mr. Board member.
I have first off, y'all's website, when you turn the page on the Complete Streets Manual, it makes a little sound, which is kind of funny.
Say that again, Cal. What?
No, it's the website, when you turn the page, it makes a page turning sound. It's kind of
Yeah.
funny.
It's a flipping book.
Yeah, exactly. I have a few. What FDOT standards did y'all incorporate? Was it Green Book or was it FDM?
Our standards are FDM for arterials and collectors. For local roads, it's Green Book.
Why?
So local roads that have been conveyed to the county after the developers designed them.
Okay, why were y'all on? Why did y'all go with FDM to the Green Book even for the arterials and collectors?
Because we felt that was, slightly higher criteria. It covers everything. Not only do we accept FDM, we accepted all their documentation, drainage manuals, everything. So it was a slightly higher criteria, and sometimes, we have conflicts with that and we change the criteria.
Gotcha. So yeah, because it is higher, but generally higher speed. Like it's more geared towards higher speed. Just for everybody here, there's a Florida statute that actually allows for, even on state roads within a local municipality or county, there's a Florida statute that doesn't require DOT to use local standards, but does say they should be considered. So that's one thing. And then I want to get with you on your later, but if you have any kind of favorite like design bulletins or anything that you've shown, things that you've worked on, because I know we've talked before, but if you can point me to some things that you think are kind of unique or anything like that, I'd like to see them, because we're actually updating our TTM as well. And we already did recently through council amended to put NACTO as our governing standards. and it's the top 3 of the NACDO guides, and it's a green book. But we're doing some other things as well to kind of narrow it down a lot what y'all have done as well. What you more so what your complete streets guide than what we've than what you're doing with the TTM. But generally, we're looking at it's all context-based design, and what our philosophy, what we have done is DOT and most standards specify minimums, as in your minimum lane widths and things like that, whereas we're specifying our maximums. So you can't go over 10 feet unless you have on most class 5 roadways. And where this gets tricky is if you actually look at the classification with through the MPO, or sorry, TPO now, there's roads like Bay to Bay that are labeled as arterials. And I'm not sure if that's because the city labeled them or TPO labeled them, but if we start getting, like Bay to Bay really shouldn't be an arterial, it only carries at most 14,000 vehicles per day. So it's something, it's tripping up the categories from collector to arterial when really it's a urban center roadway, and it really should be considered as an urban center roadway. But anyway, some of those are comments, most of those are a couple of questions, but I'll go with you later on. I want to talk to you about how to do your crash analysis and, like I said, point out some of the things that you think are unique, but we can do that at a later time.
Yeah, a lot of the design criteria in the manual is much different. Like the design speeds are very different, have different ranges, and they're tied to context classification.
Yeah.
So when you look at our table for, all the design criteria, it's all tied to the headings across the top are the context classification, and then the design speeds, and then the criteria that matches those contexts and those design speeds. So
Are you on the Green Book committee?
no, but
Do you know, is there a Hillsborough County rep?
no, but I actually a couple of years ago wrote to them and said I volunteer and never heard back.
Yeah, it's weird. I had the same issue, but I'm the local rep on there. But you should start looking at the draft that they're doing. It's pretty extensive what they're changing. So if you ever get a chance, check out the draft 2022. Although it's 20, they missed the target date.
What I'm looking for is them to change over from defining things from functional classification to context.
They are.
They did.
Yeah, they did, and they matched the FDM for sure. And then but there's a lot of NACDO references in there. There's no technical reference to NACDO, but there's all these pictures from NACDO. So,
but the problem is that we've totally redefined the context classifications because the DOT classifications don't match for local communities, counties, and probably for city, maybe you do because the urban core.
we're doing the same thing. We're redefining it as well, but it's a good baseline because we can always go against what they say,
Yeah.
So, or do more. So anyway, that's all I got. I don't want to pick up everything.
Board Member Ignis.
Yeah, I have a couple things. One, you said you eliminated urban. Are there not county roads in the urban, within the city limits?
We own some of the right of way within the city limits. Is Armenia or Howard?
Army,
Yeah.
Howard,
Parts of
David,
Where I
parts
live.
of
A
one.
lot of
But-
water.
But
Big
the
one.
the
Yeah,
city
quite a few.
maintains
No,
the,
no, we don't. No.
No, we don't maintain, but I will say generally when the county goes through resurfacings and everything, they defer to the city on design choices. So, and for instance, Bay to Bay, they got an appropriation, I think it's state appropriation, or maybe for Bay to Bay between Del Mabry and Manhattan, and the county asked if they wanted to lead design or with the city would, so we're going to do the design in-house, and then they're going to pay for both the design and the construction part. So
But don't you maintain the signals on
we,
those roads and?
historically, that has happened, but it is not required by the interlocal, so no, we don't.
So we have an interlocal agreement with certain
Control
roads.
that they don't have to maintain.
You do the,
We've been maintaining,
you
but
do
it's-
the annual, we should kind of maintenance on the roads, you know, if there's a pothole, you go out and fix the pothole.
we handle permitting, but no, not, I mean, we do fix potholes, but that's not our responsibility either. So maintenance would fall under the county only for all roadways, and then capital improvements like Columbus what we did on Columbus between Nebraska and 14, that is part of the city. But, I mean, we coordinate really well with them, and generally it's, whenever there's a design decision, they ask us where we want to see and stuff like that. So, and they've been very accommodating with, like Howard Armenia, they're doing a bike protected bike, or parking protected bike lane and all some other stuff, so.
Okay, well, from
We
what I,
have 2 Vision Zero streets in the county that I'm managing right now, so we'll be talking more about this particular topic in upcoming meetings.
Could we get a list of what county roads are in the city?
They're mapped.
they're in the local agreement.
Okay,
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
so a person who's not,
But when context classification,
Yep.
okay, when context classification and the setting of that came through this committee, that was the opportunity to comment on that. Otherwise, now it's adopted, we need to make modifications and amend it. And yes, we've had concerns about C5 and C6 going away because Hillsborough unincorporated area is urbanizing, and we have the university area, et cetera. But at the time, it was deemed that there weren't any in that category, so we could always add it later. So no, there aren't even county-owned roads in the city for C5 or 6 to be of concern currently, of the ones that are in there. That right now, we're talking about the design manual and how roads get designed in the future in the unincorporated area.
Say we've been waiting about 5 years for Columbus to be resurfaced, so if you want to make that happen, that'd be greatly appreciated.
It's beyond my
Yeah.
assignment for funding.
Board member Hester.
Yes, I'm with the Community and Infrastructure Planning Department, and our group is the one that did the Complete Streets Guide. But, and it was supposed to be kind of the guiding document for the technical design manual. There's still a lot of inconsistencies. And when I see 12.5 feet in suburban residential, it just takes my breath away. And nobody appreciates a fire truck more than I do, because our house burned when I was in high school. But there's a lot of ways that we could solve a problem without all that asphalt. I mean, wider this, I mean, it's like an interstate width. It's just too much. And it's just too much. So I would say there's a way that the truck could go down the middle, or we could do a mountable curb so that cars could pull up on it. There's just, I mean, it's like we're setting up conditions so that ambulances and fire trucks can respond to the accidents that we're causing. I mean, that gets extreme, but you know what I'm saying?
Exactly right.
And I just, we need less asphalt.
If I could just get perspective. I'm sorry. It's really quick, and I agree with you. And it's just perspective for the group. If you look at Nebraska Avenue, I know it's a state road, you look at Nebraska Avenue, it's 80 feet in width, stem to stern in through Seminole Heights. That was 86 feet that you had for that graphic. I just want to put that out there. So you have a 2-lane suburban residential road, 86 feet in width. Now, granted, it had trails and everything else, but you're right. You're using up all that space. And Nebraska is 80. Just want to put that in perspective, because I actually agree.
We just need less asphalt, less ways for people to go 40, 50, 60 miles an hour. Even if you had the side trails and the sidewalks, people still need to cross the road, right? And that's when, you know, late at night, you're walking your dog and get nailed. So
middle of the day, it doesn't have to be at night.
okay. Just ask that you guys take a look at that, and you know, we can make the case for the emergency vehicles and how we could design it so they could get through, because that is super important to everybody. But it's just, cars go too fast.
What you don't see that isn't noticeable for looking at it for a couple seconds on those typical sections is the lanes are either, depending on the speed, or 10 or 11 feet. So at 10 feet, you have 2.5 feet extra on either side. What you don't see in there, there's striping that runs along that. It isn't a 12.5-foot lane. There's striping for the 10-foot lane. There are RPMs that are identified to go along the edge of the pavement, similar to the RPMs that are on Bay Shore for the bicycle lanes. And in addition, what we can also provide in that to separate that is put delineators out there that should slow the traffic down, or we can put as on Bruce B. Downs where they separated the bike lane with concrete separators. So that would keep the lane at, the designated 10 feet.
But is that proposed in the manual? 'Cause that's
Yeah, it's in the, it's in the typical section, which you
That's
would
an
regularly
option,
see.
but vertical delineators is not, that's a lot of added cost just to protect 2.5 extra feet. Not that that's what you're proposing.
Well,
Maintenance.
that's what we're doing. We did on Citrus Park, we're doing that on Bellshells Road.
But you're separating a separate user of the roadway, a bicycle lane, which is not the case in the cross section. Anyway, that's.
Anyone else? Mr. Ignis, I'm sorry. I knew you had more things.
That's
I
okay.
apologize. So go
That's all
ahead.
right. I'm kind of the neophyte, so I ask a lot more questions than everybody else. I appreciate the emergency department consultation. Is any consultation done with Hart or Transit in this design phase, in this design preparation phase?
Not yet. Oh, the only, well, we did have coordination with them. We have typical sections that have bus stops in it and parking. So we coordinate with them to get their plans for bus stops. And we provided enough room. There's 8-foot wide sections beyond the road for them to place in a bus stop where on those local type roads.
Okay, thank you. You said you're sending it out for comment. Who are you sending it to?
It's on the website.
So is it?
And it gets, if you sign up, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
There's a place to sign up on the website to receive this information. On the website that I sent to you, if you look through that, there's a place that says, if you want to receive information, enter your name, email address, and we'll put you on the list so you'll get a notification.
Just for clarity, if you do sign up, they do allegedly alert you. I've been signed up for years. It doesn't come to me. But if you go to the website during public comment period, which he said, hopefully they'll have it posted next week, whether you're signed up or not, there will be a way for public comment. Anyone can publicly comment. They do have an e-list that they send out and request comments. TPO's on that.
Is it on that Plant Hills Road newsletter they get sent out?
No.
Is that the difference?
I don't know.
Okay.
So do we proactively send out to every, I don't know, consulting firm that does highway safety and highway design? We automatically send it out to them to ask for comments, or is it more reactive? They have to go in and check and then they get a copy?
No, if we tell all of our consultants and to tell all of their sub-consultants to sign up for to receive information from us, the design bulletins that we send out, everything we send out goes out through this list that we've been collecting over the years.
But it's still reactive. They have to do it. You're not forcing it out, right?
Yeah, well, how will we know?
I mean, PDF, so email a PDF to every firm. I'm just.
That's how I found out it was out for public comment, and I asked Larry to come to the thing. It's because their blast goes out saying, hey, I received a comment on stormwater manual or the And so we're like, I went, oh, hey, this committee would really love to get an update on this. So
Okay.
they blasted out.
I wouldn't know who would I send it out,
Okay.
or I don't know who to send it out.
Just
to.
like you're not forced to get our newsletter. You have to sign up to be a recipient of our newsletter.
Right, but I get that. Okay.
Board member Kress and then board member Hay and then board member Kim.
So maybe Larry, you could let Lisa know when the public comment is open, and Lisa could let our committee know. Is that fair?
Yeah, Monday.
Okay. So I'm not an engineer, planner, but, and I don't really know what the decision-making process on the approval of this is, but it does concern me that there was time and effort by, I guess, a different county department to create a complete streets manual or complete streets guide. But yet it doesn't sound like that's been fully incorporated into this. So I don't understand how they all relate to each other, but that seems like it'd be very relevant.
We reference the Complete Streets Guide. This is an engineering manual. The Complete Streets Guide goes into a lot of explanations saying, hey, you can find this criteria over here, you can find this over here. This is a technical engineering manual, like FDOT's technical engineering manuals. We just tell you, this is the criteria. We don't go in to explain, what the theory behind it and all of that. That is not the purpose of
So
the
there's not
manual.
criteria in there.
This was based on national research, so I would say it's pretty solid stuff.
That could be translated into criteria.
Yeah, just, if we're building new roads out in suburbia, then we have so much ability to design neighborhoods with closer streets and homes closer to the street and a sidewalk instead of just allowing this large swath through the middle of houses to be asphalt and concrete, which just seems like a waste of land too, with that many people moving to the county and us trying to preserve our rural areas. I just think we have all kinds of abilities to make more traditional neighborhoods that work better.
I think you have to change the land development code for that, because all the bike paths and all the sidewalks are on county owned land. They're not within the subdivisions. And a lot of the typical section, didn't have time to go through and point out that we're providing shared use paths. We're trying to take the on-street bikeways that a lot of people don't feel safe on, put them on shared use paths. We've added extra green space for plantings of shade trees, so people, it'll be inviting for users to come and use those shared use paths. And if you think about our last 10 days, we really need the shade, 110 heat index. Today feels like a cool day. So, and it's still like 90 degrees out. But so we incorporated a lot of extra things into, it's not just the pavement, it's not a huge wide swath of unusable land. It was thoughtful to provide the shared use path, the shade areas, the large separations away from the traffic, all went into the decision for these typical sections. The only maybe controversy is the extra asphalt that we put out there for emergency vehicles.
I agree with that controversy. I think there's plenty of national examples of where they've been able to make it work. So I would defer to what is the ideal scenario for fire rescue when it can be accommodated and have more livable streets. But I am curious what I guess this doesn't go to the Board of County Commissioners for approval, right? So it's just an internal.
So that's why this advisory committee is seeking your feedback. The TPO has been asked to review and comment, so we'll be providing a collection of all of the advisory committee's comments and our own professional.
And Rebecca, has your department officially weighed in on concerns too, or?
12 pages.
Okay, okay.
It just went out on the 14th, so it's just being received.
Okay, just
Josh.
But you didn't submit it through the,
No, they just sent, John Patrick sent it directly to Josh.
no, but
Well,
it never, that never came to us.
Why not this day before yesterday, maybe he hadn't voted.
I've heard your department hadn't formally requested their comments.
I mean, that's okay.
What,
We comment on everything.
They were signed up on the,
It doesn't always work. Yeah. Same. Board member Hay.
Some of this is great progress. I think there is room for improvement about the asphalt. And, to put it in context, the choices about the emergency are, I was fortunate to go to Europe this summer. They have decided that their trucks are much smaller, that the fire department could decide to have smaller trucks to really, but they've decided that they need these certain size trucks. So, but trust me, they're going to plow through cars or whatever to get there. I don't think having extra asphalt is helpful in the long term, just because it does increase the speed. Can you, I know this applies to brand new roads, so we're assuming it's going to be up. How, if this is approved, how does this affect the, like, how Kathy was talking about, like, Nebraska's got 80 feet. If you have an existing road that really needs to be redesigned and you only have a certain amount of right of way, you don't have the preferred amount, can you go through the decision-making process of how you rate what needs to fall off or what needs to be removed to fit the improvement into the right of way? Like how is that?
yeah,
defined?
there's a section in the manual that revises some of the design criteria. We call it the retrofit design criteria in the manual, which changes some of the requirements for widths of items. When you have a right of way, I mean, these are for basically brand new right of way. If you have an existing right of way, unless you're going to purchase the right of way and put a whole new corridor in, these won't apply. So we had this retrofit section saying what things you can narrow up or.
Because, again, not an engineer, but as a planner, I think for my user, it's always difficult to understand, like, when the county wants to put in a turn lane, and then they can't fit the shared use path that wants to be on the side, how that is decided to remove, that's the difficult part, because we see, I mean, I've seen sections of existing roadway, like I think Hartford, there was a brand new section built because they created a new subdivision on the other side, created a whole new intersection. That was just last year or the year before. There's no sidewalks. So someone, somewhere decided we're widening this road for the cars, but there's no improvement, at least in that section that was widened, of pedestrians. So that's the difficult kind of thing as planners, because we're kind of told sidewalks are going to be everywhere. And then we see these changes occur and there isn't. So I'm sorry. Oh, no.
So if that was development and it was done under the development that they didn't put the sidewalk in, they're supposed to put sidewalks in. We have no control over that. That's DSD, Development Services Department.
If it's a private subdivision.
No. Hartford is Is it?
It's a
It's
county
a
road.
county road.
Okay. Well, hierarchy, let's move the cars. And guide, we were excited about when it got proposed and adopted. It had a different hierarchy. You should protect the other user and balance it with the cars. So I don't know if this new manual does that or not.
Yeah, I mean, that's what surprised me was it's not actually in the subdivision.
That was built prior with the old manual. So Larry, is there something in this manual that reflects what the guide does where you would have to maintain the other users of the roadway and not just
Yeah,
add
I
the
don't
lane
know
and
where,
things that to
I
build
don't
up?
know where, in the projects that I've seen, I don't know where we would eliminate the sidewalk. If there was an existing sidewalk,
Well, there
an
wasn't
existing
one there,
sideway
was the problem.
would be replaced, so, and if that took place as part of the development, then we have no say in that thing.
That's
That's a different
like,
manual. This is for their roads. That's for the other.
That's just, so,
Yeah, it's on a county road and development services. We do not see those projects where they modify the road. The only projects that we see from development services are technical projects where they have signals or roundabout or they're putting in any type of signalization, RFBs, bridges. That's the only plans we see from them.
Okay, but there is a manual that regulates the design of subdivision roads.
Yes.
This manual regulates the building of county roads. So your BOCC built the road, this is the manual for that. Private developer building a subdivision, there's a manual for that. Larry's not in charge of that manual, so let's not get lost on that one. But how would you like your county-owned roads, with your taxpayer dollars constructed?
Actually,
Is that true or not?
well, not exactly, because we do oversee the TTM manual. As a matter of fact, we've kind of gone in and taken out all references out of the TTM for arterials and collectors and referencing this new manual for design. But we do not review all the plans. That's taken care of.
That's a whole nother part.
Yeah, and if a decision is made by development services that eliminates the sidewalk, we wouldn't know about it until.
But that's not the example that was given, so
Yeah.
let's please not get limited time.
Yeah.
Okay, Board Member Hinsdale.
I know this was an overview, so there are probably a lot of details in here that may cover this, but I was wondering if you could comment on engineering criteria specific to the needs of vulnerable users in the areas where they are most vulnerable. So our schools, our parks, transit stops, that kind of location. Do you have separate criteria directly addressing those needs? Because I have found in a lot of our safe routes to school work that we talk about tools that we can use, but we don't talk about requirements we have as we're putting in new roads. And since Hillsborough County has so many new schools they have to be building, I think this would be a great opportunity to make sure that the specific needs of schools, parks are addressed in this kind of manual.
Again, when the schools are designed, when they do their roads or intersections, we don't see those. It all goes through land development. We do put out design, we have a design bulletin that says any signalized intersection, every lane of the intersection must have a crosswalk, and it's a high emphasis crosswalk with all the pedestrian push buttons.
But Larry,
No.
you do not
Yeah.
review the comment on the design of the school. That this is a manual for collectors and arterials.
A
And
road
many
goes by a
collectors and arterials go past the school, and then it's definitely Hillsborough County's jurisdiction. It is not the school district.
Yeah, I'm
Their
not
jurisdiction
curious.
stops at the boundary. They do not influence the design of the roadway in front of or outside of the schools. And that's where we're
Yeah,
questioning.
I'm not worried about what happens on school property. I'm saying, what do you do a block away for the children trying to get to school? That has, the school can do nothing about what happens to the roads a block away. If those are county roads, those are exactly the roads. Otherwise, like, what roads are you covering in this design manual? They're the roads in the county that the county residents use to make their way around the community. And if you are within 2 miles of a school, you have children walking on those county roads. Are there design criteria in here that require certain kinds of roads to be built in that area?
It can be
No,
There's no
the
distinction.
requirements are what the requirements are for arterials and collectors. They have sidewalks, they have crosswalks, they have, they have all the criteria that they're supposed to have for safe crossings and, but again, when they rebuild those arterials, if they don't have a signal at the school, we don't see those. That's all decisions.
Yeah, I'm
that are-
speaking about specific, if this is specifically new roads within the county, and we have at least 15 schools that we need to have built like 3 years ago, this will be coming up a lot.
Yeah, well, we follow all the criteria for,
Okay, well, I think I'm saying that will be my comment, is that you should have specific criteria within school walking areas.
we do a lot of retrofits for schools.
I know, and it's a waste of time. Like, I mean, it's great, but like, this is, yeah, do it right the first time. If we have so many new schools being built, wouldn't it be better to have good roads getting to them as we build them, as opposed to retrofitting them 20 years ago when we've had 30 kids killed in crashes on the way to school?
The retrofits are for schools that are built 50 years
Right.
ago.
Right.
But all the new roads require all of the new criteria.
And do any of those criteria specifically address, and my example is school area needs?
Yeah, they have to have high emphasis crosswalks. They have to have all the ramps. They have to have all the technical warning devices. When required, if needed, they'll put in RRFBs. So all that criteria is already in place.
Okay.
To be fair, though, 50 years ago, the reason why the roadways are so unsafe is that the engineering standards that came after the schools were built made the roads more unsafe. So basically, the road was probably safer 50 years ago, and then everything got basically widened and wider lanes and everything else. So we're kind
There
of
were
trying
also
to.
less cars 50 years ago too. Yeah.
And the manual is different.
I'm agreeing.
The lane widths are not about the capacity, but go ahead.
Kathy, I think.
No, that Tom Luno is online,
Oh, yes.
and then you can finish the room. So, Luno, you may unmute yourself now.
Hi, everybody. I just had one question. The one thing that really stood out for me was that 92% of whether it was crashes or fatalities, I don't know, occurred on roads with posted speed limits of 40 over miles per hour. It seems like maybe there could be a reevaluation of roads, specifically in the C3T and C4, the suburban town and urban general. Maybe 30 or 35 should be the max, and 40 should not be permitted. Or, I guess as a driver, when you see a posted speed limit of 30 or 40, you automatically think, oh, I'm allowed to go 10 above that. I guess it'd be great to not have that perceived image that you can go 10 above and just kind of wipe out the 40 miles per hour, at least on the suburban town and urban general altogether. Has any of these this can relate to existing roads, new roads, it's cheap, and it could be a good first step. I just wondered if any of that lowering the speed limit was considered.
Yes, in all of the context classifications, we give a variety of ranges of speed for certain conditions. So we can't automatically take a road that's posted as 45 and set the design speed at 30 because honestly, the drivers are not gonna obey that. They're gonna still go at as fast as they can. The only way to really control the speed, well, there are some strategies for speed management where you can put chicanes in the roads. We put roundabouts in, those would control. Those are big ticket items, need to be.
But they're expensive. So just, I mean, I know along Bay Shore, they lowered the speed limit and I do think it helped. I think the traffic goes a little slower. I think it's something not to ignore and assume that people won't listen to the speed limit change.
Cal, what did you lower the speed?
We went to 35, but it wasn't just a speed limit lowering. We narrowed lanes, did a bunch of other stuff to the roadway. So it's generally with speed limit changes, you want to use that opportunity to design for the new conditions. Yeah. So and also one of the things like with speed limit changes, a lot of times people say, well, where's your speed study? And it's like, one of the things that we say is you don't need a speed study when you're redesigning the road to a target speed. So generally, instead of going, it's kind of backwards to expect people to drive a certain speed and lower the speed limit because of the speed study, rather than to make the road safer and slower driving, and then enforce the speed that way. Kind of treat it as a new road.
So
Gus, did you have something specific to
Well,
this conversation?
I actually have it written down. What happened with Bay Shore? You were talking about speeds and the traffic accidents and deaths over 40. And I know Bay Shore, you guys did something. When I say you guys, you're the city, right? Okay, I just need to clarify because you keep saying we, and I'm like, who's the we?
City of Camden.
Okay, so Cal, you're the city. Okay, so county. Bay Shore is a city street.
City Street and county owned.
This is a gray area where the city does stuff.
Armenia, Howard, Lake Road, then. Okay.
Portions of those roads are county
Oh, only portions.
owned.
Wow.
Yes.
No wonder why there's no volunteers on this committee. And ma'am, you're with the county as well,
A different department.
a different department, but you have a booklet of design as well that was consulted but not completely incorporated.
You got planners and engineers. That's the difference.
Repeat that, Kathy.
Planners?
Planners, engineers. That was going to be my comment, that we need to start breaking
Community
down silos.
infrastructure.
Okay. Building planning. Correct? Is that
Engineering.
Designing.
design,
Engineering.
engineering, planning? Okay. And where's building? And where's building? Because you brought up a point just a minute ago about this intersection.
Construction workers are not in the room.
Okay.
Yeah,
They
DSD,
have to follow the design of this
that's
department.
DSD, they're not here.
Okay, and I don't mean to be frustrating. This is.
The other piece that Larry was talking about was the design manual that's out there for subdivisions, right? And that's exactly, which is a totally separate one. This is gonna be my point, is they all need to get together
Thank you, thank you.
and get this,
That's
get on the same freaking page. That's my,
There's a whole nother manual for state boundaries.
And there's something about land use. I heard somebody say there had to be a change to land use. And that's where is this is part of it. I think that's what part of this committee is trying to get all these parts talking to each other so that we can get some unified behavior in the planning and the engineering so that we have safe roads around our schools and our parks and everywhere else. I live in the city, so I'm looking at what a lot of you're talking about in a third party. I'm never going to live in South County. I have no desire to. I'm an urban person. But I'm trying to get this idea in my head. And I completely understand what Emily's saying is we're going to build 15 more schools in this county, and we're going to build roads that were obsolete before the schools were ever designed 10 years ago. You know, it's like building an expressway that's going to reach maximum capability the day before it opened, which is what they do in
The new
Philadelphia.
roads are going to follow this manual. They're a collector and arterial that it's county owned. So it has all the pieces that make up for a safe school in this manual in draft form. We're trying to improve upon it by getting feedback from this
Okay.
committee. And then we need to move on to another.
By the way, there was discussions, we had discussions about combining the TTM into this manual. So that.
And you chose not to.
No, that, it couldn't be done at this time. That's like a task for next time. So we
We'll bring that
talked
back.
about that and.
Good. All right, Zona needs to speak.
Okay, no. I got you, but it doesn't matter the county big, but okay. You put the down won't be that down even.
Even.
Yeah, with Martin Luther King. It's not even all the way from the down to the living down here.
That's the
My
maintenance.
other question is 50 and 7 who get in idea of what the lights going that way, going worse, instead of like going green, the other day, they hit the cops. But I'm thinking that the length is green from both sides. Can only hit green one.
Yeah.
Okay, it's unrelated to the tech manual that we're reviewing right now, but we can answer that.
Yeah, we had a very similar, first off with the green, we had a very similar issue on Bay Shore where it was free flow northbound, stopped southbound, right? So northbound was going, but if there's no northbound traffic, you wouldn't know that. People would see the hand to not cross, but they'd be like, it's my turn to cross. They'd start going across and then it's a bad situation. We fixed that on Bay to Bay. We're going to do it on Howard as well soon at that intersection of Bay Shore. So I get that. As far as who maintains, that would be county maintenance for the sidewalk. MLK, I'm sorry, state maintenance, FDOT owns that road, another agency. So FDOT owns that road. But generally, when you have these questions, call the city, we'll get you to the right people. So there's a number 274-3108 or 3101 that you can call that and we'll get you to the right agency because we know who owns it. The what?
He tells you right now. Okay. But yeah, as far as future roads, the sidewalk cannot by state law, federal law, actually, be sloped more than 8% or whatever. So there's a cross slope rule. So it's in their manual that they cannot build severe cross slope.
It is.
That's an existing road that needs to be maintained to today's and federally required standards. It's not. Okay. Yeah, one more question.
Just a little quick, someone said this to me, it might have been Christina Costa, that the sign saying drive like your kids live here, the sign should say design the roads like your kids live here. That's it.
You know, DOT has some of those signs that kind of say things like that, you know, my dad works here or something.
Yeah.
Like that. I just want to say, Emily, if you identify some things, criteria that you think's not in there, I can respond to that.
Okay.
Just send me an email. But I think all the criteria is basically in the design manuals.
So if we have magic money to build to this standard in the future,
The planning and engineering is already incorporated into this. That's through context classification and context sensitive design. Now, whether or not the design standards match conflict or context, that's another standard, another thing. But the idea that planning and design is together, that's old business now because DOT has done that, the county's done that, everybody's done that. Everybody realizes that it just needs to be refined. My big question, one, let's talk about fire real quick. It's ironic that the city of Tampa has a 20-foot maximum or minimum roadway, but that's our maximum roadway width for local roadways, right? If I were to do a one-way local road, I would have to make it 24 feet because fire requires 8-foot parking and 16-foot free width, which doesn't make any sense. It's insane, right? So my point is, who gives fire the authority to overrule a licensed engineer, because that's not allowed by state law. And I looked into the Florida statutes. They have nothing in there. If Hillsborough County has that, they're practicing engineering without license, and that should be looked at because fire should not have the ability to accommodate unsafe design.
But I don't know where that is.
No.
I was told that by someone above me that they.
They can. And I want to know that though, because what you're doing, what they're doing in enforcing that is making a roadway that is more unsafe, harder to maintain, more asphalt, less resilient. There's more that goes into these decisions of what they're thinking of, because I'm going to tell you, I've dealt with these people before, and what they know is FDPP. And they go, it has to be 16 feet. I go, why? And they don't have an answer for me because all they know is it has to be 16 feet because they read it somewhere, and it doesn't make sense. So they're not designers, they're code people. And it's not something that we should be putting into a design manual just because it's code. There's two different things. So that's my only thing on that.
One of the reasons they gave us is because when roads are like 24 feet and they, 2 lanes, 12 feet or 22 feet, is that they end up at the end of the year paying for a lot of mirrors that they knock off of cars.
So that doesn't matter though. And the same thing with, we get the same thing for, we get this fear-based risk management, like engineering standards. And it's like, do y'all really, look, I could go into a whole thing. Just the police department we had 31 homicides in 1 year. And the police department's capital program was bigger than the transportation department. We had 81 traffic deaths that year. So there is something to look at where I'm talking about capital, I'm not talking about operating. I think there's a lot of public safety rules and regulations that are making things unsafe. So it's just, we need to start looking at this holistically, and that includes limiting what fire can say to us, because what they're saying does not, they're basically practicing engineering without a license.
And it's inconsistent with Vision Zero, lowering the speeds, because, you have these big wide lanes, whether they're striped or not, people psychologically feel like they can exceed the speed limit and drive comfortably at a faster speed, which we know leads to fatalities. It's another reason. But I didn't know myself.
I would like some clarification. The comments that we're providing as a committee, is it going to include Calvin's that he just said? I think that's vitally important of what he just said.
Can that be repeated so it's in the minutes more than once? Okay, what you just said to me is.
Well, she's capturing.
Yeah, it's all recorded. It's in the minutes. The person that's in charge of writing the TPO's response letter has been listening intently.
Okay.
The whole time. I am on her team and also doing that.
I just wanted that clear.
I want to make that a sign and walk them down the street.
And I'm not gonna take lots of time here, but we've noticed things way beyond what the committee has come up with today that are also comments. Because we didn't just look at the one cross section.
Kathy said it.
I just have one quick question. I would imagine it's public record because there were comments written by a public official. Is it possible to get the comments and send them out to
The
the committee?
committee's requesting it, I can request a copy.
I would like to see
Public
the,
document, what you put on
Yeah.
county letterhead.
yeah, I would like to see I think we should all see the comments that were sent back.
Okay, I'll share that letter. Plus, you guys always, as part of the
Make sure
TPO
that the
packet, you'll
actual
see the
engineers
TPO letter.
from Josh.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, first thing, I hope Larry has a nice relaxing lunch. Friends from all this. Question, this is regarding the technical. and tell me it doesn't apply or it's not part of it. The consideration for where roundabouts within a roadway, if you're building a new roadway, it is in this technical manual, a section about how roundabout is to be designed. Is that in a different section? It's just designed.
So that, the design criteria for that comes out of FHWA. They've just put out a new manual on roundabouts, 1046. And so I guess that had superseded the old manual 936. So all the governing criteria for roundabouts is in that location. Typically, we put roundabouts at intersections. They don't occur typically in the middle of the road somewhere.
Right, okay, that's good clarification. I just hope the county is using those more, because when you hear that an intersection, just the mechanics of it cost them around $1 million. And again, during my trip in Europe, there were roundabouts everywhere, and I'm thinking how much money they're saving on the infrastructure of these, not every intersection having lights. And the $1 million that goes into all that equipment to make the light turn green and red is just blowing. And
Not to mention the exponential
they're
safety
not,
factor.
they're not, all the money that we could be using for pedestrians and stuff like that, it's just my opinion, it's morphed into this kind
The upfront right away cost, man.
of, it's just.
Or to do the building there.
All right,
And build their parts of the roads, don't build the roads.
so we're, right, so you've got what you need?
Yep.
You don't need to make the motion, are there any motions for anything, or?
No, but, no.
No.
I don't think you guys could summarize this whole 45 minutes. It's the little committee.
Nice turn.
Thank you, Larry, for taking the
Yes.
front of them.
Thank you.
It's all new and, we're working through it.
Yeah.
This committee's just committed to extraordinary.
Yes. We're passionate. All right. Nice. Thank you again to Larry. Okay, next we've got the 2050 plan needs assessment for major projects brainstorm.
Okay.
Oh,
To set a little context, earlier you saw Connor, and he talked about his tech memo on equity. There are many tech memos, real choices, resiliency, et cetera. So this committee gets the privilege of having the major projects brainstorming, because there's this other bucket of the very big, expensive economic projects, and we've got a rough draft of a list, so.
Thank you, Lisa, for giving me that intro.
Set the context.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I'm Vishaka Shibraman, TPO staff, and Lisa already told me what's the purpose of the reason why I'm here today. As Lisa mentioned, this is a needs assessment where there will be multiple parts of different tech memos that make up the major LRTP. The 2050 plan is called, the 2050 long range transportation plan is called the 2050 plan. And today I will be explaining what is this and the reason why I'm here. So the major projects as defined by the long range transportation plan are any roads that are for widening, new roadways, expansion. It also includes fixed guideway transit, including bus rapid transit and water transit, etc. These projects have to be identified in the 2050 plan through a regional coordination process, and the projects need to be identified and listed as numbers according to the federal guidelines. They are screened. Just to give you another background, the projects that we will be identifying will go into the long range transportation plan travel demand model. They will be modeled for the level of congestion, and then that's how they will be ranked. The screening of the congested corridors will give the travel delay reduction, and the projects are ranked from highest to lowest. For fixed guideway projects, they will be ranked based on the ridership per mile, again from highest to lowest, and that is how these projects will be included.
Sorry, committee members, I know it's very tempting to have side conversations, but because of our hybrid situation, when you do that, it picks up the recording of the thing instead of the presenter and makes the minutes impossible. So please resist the urge.
So yeah, coming back to that, that's the process for how these projects will be included in the plan. So what this slide is showing these are some of the projects that we received from the various committees or at the TPO board and also from staff that I've heard of that came as requests to us. These are just a preliminary requests that have come to us for testing. Again, that's what I mentioned in the long range, the travel demand model, the Tampa Bay regional planning model is what will be used to see if these projects are even worth making it into the long range transportation plan. So some of the projects that I want to highlight, again, these are preliminary at this time. These have not been tested and we'll have to go through various process before it becomes actual projects. Some of the projects are county projects, including some projects focusing in South County, Gibsonton Diverging Diamond, the Lithia Pinecrest widening from Fish Hawk Boulevard to Lumsden Avenue. And then there is Thea is talking about a potential crosstown extension, again in the south area. There is a Big Bend Road widening project from Simmons Loop to Covington Gardens Drive. And also some additional requests like a West Shore to USF Transit on dedicated right-of-way. We have tested similar projects. We have talked about similar projects in the previous LRTP, but this will be again revisiting those projects. Additionally, FDOT has agreed to test some lane management strategies, including variable tolls and such strategies on 275 from SR 60 Tampa West Shore interchange to the downtown interchange. There is also a consideration for water transit from Tampa McDill Avenue to roughly St. Pete. So these are some of the projects that we have received as requests, and we will be using them to test the model and see where the traffic is going, how the impacts of the road, these projects will be. This is what I just mentioned. These projects will be evaluated for future relay. And so my request today would be for this committee, if you have any requests, you can send it to me or Lisa. And then that will be included in the project testing as we are moving towards the LRTP. We haven't yet scoped the needs assessment, but that's going to be happening soon. So this is a good time to begin that process. If you have any requests, we could get them, including the project location, beginning and end miles, number of lanes that is anticipated, and for transit, HART is here. So we would want to know what type of transit is being identified and the route, if it's a fixed guideway project, etc. We will be looking at some of the HART's transit development plan and other documents, but it's also good to have this request coming back to us. And with this, I recommend if you could give the request sent out to us by September 13th. Lisa will be coordinating with you. I will also send you, this presentation is in the packet, but if you need any additional questions, send them out to me, and we will hope for a feedback.
Is it too early to request a project on this?
No.
No, this is the time. And you have something to me, tell her to bring it out.
You have a month to send it to me as an email, or if you want to.
Can you go back to the list so they can see?
Sure.
And then, yes, there are a lot of South County requests, but we have a few other, like, are there more mature projects somewhere else? Yeah.
ERT.
Are there any transit ones on here? Is there any transit ones missing that you would like the model to consider? We're not saying they're going to get funded or get into the fire.
So we would like to propose a new I-75 interchange near the county line south.
Okay.
That came up from one of our commissioners. We have a giant community that's going to be built out south of 674 in Wamama, and that is going to propose all kinds of issues because 674 is the only way right now to get to I-75 in that community.
So somewhere between that one and Manatee?
Yes. Okay. You have to go for quite a long way.
We just need to know where.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
DOT controls the time spacing and all that.
Absolutely.
That we can.
Yeah, there's going to be a train right down there.
Yeah.
But have you had conversations with DOT? Because ultimately this will be, like she said, we will be testing it and coordinating it with DOT.
I need to check with John Patrick or Greg Wardell to see if they've reached out to DOT yet about that.
Okay.
Shaka, I can tell you the whole history offline.
Is this further south than Sun City Center?
I think I heard about that. The development coming, so it's, I mean, we are hearing it.
I'll tell you about it.
Maybe the projects can be prioritized by how well they relate to Vision Zero.
Okay. Just to clarify, we have separate needs assessment that is currently being undertaken. That is for testing the safety of some of these projects, and what that will produce is it will produce a list of potential treatments that we could implement, and they go by general criteria based on the type of roadway. So that will be what that needs assessment will be producing. But that will look at smaller projects. These are more for the larger projects. That's why you see all this I-75 and the interchanges and all those. But definitely that will also be included as part of the needs assessment, because I think when you say the Vision Zero, those are looking at more local projects and smaller corridor segments and such, and these are like the bigger projects.
We're probably only going to have time and money to test so many projects. Yes. So I guess maybe then I should restate it by saying maybe we can prioritize, transit and water transit over road widening.
Within this category, right? Yeah.
Yes.
That's something I can definitely take it as a note.
Thank you. Because yes, some of them are anti.
Yeah.
It's funny that out of the 4 bullet points at the beginning of the presentation, road widening isn't to it. And we just had this discussion about the schools and wider roads and higher speeds and speed and safety. And 2 of the 4 bullet points say road widening, which I think we as a committee are actually moving in the opposite direction of road widening. We're actually moving into lower, smaller lanes to lower speeds to make things safer. So I just find it very fascinating that in the presentation, road widening is 2 of the 4 dots. So that.
Which her motion, yeah, got it.
Got it.
That is, the topic is the big projects that are road widenings or big transit projects.
Right, but if we're trying to.
It is one of several pieces of the plan. We have to consider those and test those. We're not saying they're going anywhere. We just have to test that. But yes, in this category, you're going to see road widening because that's where it is. It's not in the Vision Zero category. It's not in the real choices as much, but that's why it's defined.
Just for clarification, other people are adding stuff on this committee. So, they might not be as progressive as we are on our thought process.
Right.
So, Justin, I think is next.
I would just say, in addition to West Shore, the USF downtown West Shore, I would say add a Brandon downtown West Shore.
Are you looking at a fixed guideway transit or a?
Fixed guideway transit.
Is it part of a plan that is?
It's in the TDP now.
Okay, then
But
that'll be.
But ridership estimates should be updated and that sort of thing. So
Okay,
that
yeah,
would be-
because we will be testing for ridership transit in the model also. So although that would be just a small consideration, I mean, although that wouldn't be a big part of it, but that will be definitely, if it's on the GDP, that is going to be tested as one of the projects. And that's Brandon to West Shore?
Brandon downtown West Shore.
Okay. Yeah, I'll take a look at it.
Like an upside down team. Right?
We already had bus service eliminated.
No, I mean, that's already in there from USF to downtown, so.
Yeah, this would probably connect the east-west.
And retesting it.
Okay.
I mean, those are all good to have.
And then I would say an additional fixed guideway one to consider putting in there would be the 50th and 56th Street corridors from USF to downtown.
This is great, thanks.
Would you mind if you could send me an email? Just so that I have it in my notes here, but that I keep as an official, yeah, just to keep an official record of those requests.
Just real quick, with the idea of road widening, the It's not necessarily the bad thing. Just, you do need capacity on roadways. It's safe design and it's doing it in a safe manner. There's major roads in other cities that carry more traffic that don't have the same issues that we have. And it's all about design standards. That's what when Larry was up there too. So just to put that out there, it's not about capacity, it's about the design. So.
Thank you for
Design and context.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that, yeah. And these are projects of regional, so might be from Pasco, a connection from Pasco to Pinellas, and that's what we talked about. The Manatee one would be serving some traffic from Manatee to Hillsborough County.
This is purely anecdotal, and it's to back what Cal's saying is I've had the fortune the last 2 weekends to drive to Watula through Sun City Center and Waimama, and you hit a long stretch of that. I think it is 674. It's 2 lanes, and there's a lot of developments that are being approved out there, and they're paying their share into the eventual improvement. It has to be widened. There's just no way that all of that development is going to be on a 2-lane road, because even on the weekends, it's tough out there just to get through the traffic. So eventually it gets wide. It's just about the design in the end.
That gets again to our land use issue. If we designed those differently so you could have more road alternatives instead of one arterial, then you wouldn't have to widen all of them, but here we are.
Well, it's also an hour away. You know, I mean, like, it's a totally different area. This is a massive county.
That's a whole other issue.
Yeah.
But
There's a few that I think I would find interesting. I would say bridge or bridges over the Alfaya. I do think we need to be studying, and tell me if this is appropriate in this study, but I think we need to be studying the impacts of actually connecting other streets to then, because as a planner, my understanding, more of a grid pattern to disperse the traffic than constantly forcing everything onto these major roads. We should be really pushing connections, and more of them. So my thought was under the 275, dealing with that and through especially the city, looking at opportunities of if additional connections are made under or over the interstate, does that reduce the impact on major roads that we have right now? And maybe it would remove the need to widen those major roads if we had more connections. So there's that.
Like Rio Trask.
Right, like what they're doing over in West Shore, see if there's impacts in other parts of the city. If we can get more streets through, it might change the traffic flow. Like in the county, I had a conversation with Boston when he came on about he was asking about connections. And one that we identified to him was Providence Lakes between Providence and Kings. The right of way is there. It was originally planned to go through, but it's 2 dead-end roads at this point, and there's some land in the middle, and they're not connected. If that was connected,
Providence and what?
it's Providence Lakes Boulevard between Providence and Kings. The right of way is there. It's just the neighborhood might be not too keen on it, but we have to try to start getting over this flow of
It's just
neighborhood.
modeling big picture
Modeling, right.
projects.
It may help Lumsden, it may help, the other roads adjacent, if there's more roads through it. Because again, as a planner, the more dense we get, the more connections we need, not wider roads through the more areas that needs to be just more connections. So that's kind of my soapbox. But so hopefully I think that's.
That's a very good point, David. Thank you. Yeah.
Anything in Plant City?
I don't know Plant City, but the South County issue, instead of building another highway to make more cars move faster in the Selman extension, what about putting some kind of BRT or something, some alternative, so that we're not putting more cars on the roads, so moving more people from South County to Central County or North County, whatever you call it.
That's why he added the Brandon, to all
Well,
that.
the Brandon West Shore thing, they had a bus route. I lived on it and it was fantastic. And they closed it during COVID. And now it only goes as far as downtown. So that was probably one of the most innovative routes that Hart put in place. It was running from West Shore over the highway to downtown to out to Brandon. And they had to shut it down. Well, because nobody was riding it. I was one of 2 people who rode that bus during rush hour. But it was
I
brilliant.
appreciate the kudos on the route that we came up with, but yeah, it's a lot pretty hard.
To build on Gus's statement, is this appropriate, like if there were strategic park and rides, to study where strategic park and rides would go? Because that was always my thing. I used to illegally park at the mall / whatever restaurant was out there and get on the bus to come downtown here. But then one day, the company that everyone was parking in decided we're telling your car tomorrow to park here again. So it created this, how do I
That
wanted
would be
to,
really great for the transit development plan.
not this.
Big
Okay.
picture modeling, Mashaka, just because I don't see it here, but we talked about it at a staff briefing on this topic. The segment of Line Talk from Countryway to the county line. Widen it, because it's the only part that's not wide. And the right of way's there, and it's causing all kinds of road widening. Just test it, see what the. All right.
Does
All right.
that cover
Oh,
everything?
yeah, we have lots of stuff.
Lots of-
Okay.
Um,
Thank you. Thank you.
Can you do a review of the Selma extension with Gandy? Because it hasn't done anything to reduce traffic in afternoon rush hour. Still takes an hour to get across the Gandy Bridge. So they built this giant highway, but
The newest portion of Gandy, requesting an update on that. We can consider it for future topics. I got it down.
Sorry.
Okay, speaking of.
So can I talk? MLK between what, 50th and, the eastern part of MLK that gets down really narrow by the,
40th to 50th.
I know there's a cemetery there. Was that ever studied? Did we look at, it's
I
tough because
heard-
it's red, like you just can't move. And
I'm sure
many times
DFC has a project there.
Okay.
But if you put it down, then we can find
Yeah.
that out and know not to.
I would test that one again, just if you
Got
have
it?
to consider.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just don't know the exact stretch of the road.
I'll email it to you.
Okay, that'll be awesome. If not, I can get back to you
Yeah.
separately.
Right, we got 10 minutes left. Any final?
2 months.
You got time, September 13th, because the reason why we are proposing this time is we will be doing an October board workshop. That's also another thing I wanted to mention, where we are trying to bring out whatever elements that we have been studying as part of the needs assessment. And some of these projects will also go to the board. There will be multiple steps for this long-range transportation plan process for public involvement, and we will come back with.
All the pieces, and then we put it together, then we tested it, I like comment, say all the things you did today, then we refine it. So, okay.
And also, this is just the needs plan. This is just identifying where the needs are, but the cost feasible plan, which we'll be producing next year, will be the guide, what will be feasible with the money that we have.
Yeah, that'll be the next stage.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Old business.
Okay, there's a survey out, we're studying whether to merge this regional TPA, blah, blah, blah. So there's a survey out, so take the survey, it's a hot link in your thing. It closes August 20th, so this is it. Comment on that. Last time you made a motion for us to explore and seek permission to use the public county garage for the evening meetings. Their success, so kudos to you guys. We emailed the, and facilities will keep
Congratulations
the
to you,
garage
though.
open.
That's congratulations to you for getting it done, is it not?
Did the wishes of the committee and they said yes. So that now and we sent them our calendar. So now they just know when we're having evening meetings. So it's available to the public.
He's saying kudos to you for following through.
Yes. Thank you.
All right.
But TPO meetings will be reflected in their scheduling.
Anyone else?
Yeah, just.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Kelly Farron with the City of Tampa Mobility emailed and said, share, and she's looking for volunteers. Tampa is a bicycle-friendly business. They are looking to renew and refresh their certification as such and maybe upgrade it to a higher level. And so if anyone's interested, please contact Kelly. She's seeking community volunteers. And then I have one more thing that I emailed myself. Oh, yeah. Our county attorney has communicated that we are not hybrid for all. I mean, we are going to offer our meetings hybrid, but you have to follow the same rules you had prior to a pandemic. There's no emergency declaration, so I have to have you physically here. We're going to let people participate in extraordinary circumstances. So, if you're sick, be sick and don't attend. And you can participate, but we're not going to vote on virtual participation because that has expired. You're now back to original sunshine law rules. Be here in person unless there's an extraordinary circumstance, and in all cases, communicate. So I'm going to track you down with RSVPs. I'm going to presume you're here unless you communicate otherwise. Got it? And who do you communicate to? Gail. Me and Gail. Both of us. She's recording. She's my backup. Thank you. Notes over.
I'd like to do a quick bill status update if you want to do for another month.
Oh, okay.
Like a presentation. And then secondly, PROAG, which is public right-of-way accessibility guidelines. It's different than the ADA guidelines that have been official. It's adopted in September. So for county folks, the city, they're not a lot different, but there are things that differ in public right-of-way than they do on ADA or for on-site. Some of it's less restrictive, like the use of handrails and the maximum length of the ramps. But we're developing training for our plan reviewers, especially our building department, to make sure that they are following PROAG in the right-of-way. And I would probably advise y'all do the same thing because they are the ones that are control. I mean, I'm sure y'all don't look at every development, but they do. So just be wary of that. It's been in development for 20 years. DOT has been in the city and the county have used it for the last 20 years for real, but it's now official finally.
It's official on your training staff?
Yeah.
Okay. Should
Yeah, we'll share what we got, so.
Okay, quick bill back down. I do have a light agenda coming up before then we get really busy with election and stuff, so I'll fill you in.
Just a quick promotion, Saturday, September 23rd, Emily and I both sit on the committee for the inaugural World Car Free Day, something like 2,000 cities across the world that participate. So there'll be fun activities in West Shore, downtown, and Ybor with safe, or at least suggested biking routes between the three and transit.
Okay. Plan Hillsborough sponsoring and participating as well, and it's in the agenda. So thank you for bringing attention to it.
We get a report on update on micromobility. I've been using it a lot, and when I hear some official positions on what's actually being done in the city, because they're decaying quickly.
If that topic was here recently, it's probably
Months ago.
months that you were,
No, I was here, I heard that, but there's been a significant downturn in service and dependability of vehicles within the last 2 months, and I think it's on par.
okay, well, that be accountability follow-up, not a presentation of
Okay.
the status of something.
Yeah.
That's what this committee is for. But if you call that a city number and record it, then they have to
Okay,
give the vendors.
okay,
Karen has to deal with that a lot.
thank you.
All right, anyone else? We're over time
Yeah,
here.
thank you for hanging in, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Good meeting.
See you next week.
Yeah.
Rebecca, it's not obvious.